Whiskey Reads, and this is my reading Scottish wrap up for March. I do one of these every month because I have been actively trying to read more Scottish fiction. So I figured that my Scottish books deserve a special wrap up video all of their own, and the last few months I have been reading 4 books each month by Scottish authors, and this month was exactly the same. I got through 4. I suppose I'm just gonna go through them in the order in which I read them. So first up was Risio by Denise Mina. Fun fact, maybe not that fun, the day that I started reading this book I was in Glasgow and I saw Denise Mina on Sucky Hall Street riding a bicycle wearing a delightful green cardigan. I don't know if that was a sign that I was going to love the book, but I loved the book, so maybe it was. This is historical fiction about Risio, who was basically best friends with Mary Queen of Scots, and the story behind his murder is pretty brutal, and this is a fictitious account of what happened. I keep saying fiction because I kept forgetting that it was fiction because it just... Denise Mina is an amazing writer, so it just felt so real, and I really enjoyed this book. It was super short, tiny teeny novella. When I was in primary school, we were absolutely obsessed with Mary Queen of Scots, so I knew a lot about this period in history. So I really enjoyed being able to read a book about something that I knew quite well, and the plot was so well done, and it was very strange because even if you don't know about Risio and you don't know what to expect, I think the front cover is going to tell you that it's not going to be good times for him. I really enjoyed reading a story about what could have happened, and the characters in this book were great. I mean, they were based on real people, but I just found this book to be utterly just... it was so compelling and it was so Moorish, and I didn't want to put it down. And a lot of my friends have read this book because I think it was the Waterstones Scottish fiction of maybe last month, but to be honest, all the months have merged into one for me, so it could have been January? I don't know, but a lot of my friends have read this book, so it's really good to be able to chat to people about it, which I think really enhanced my enjoyment. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. If half stars were a thing, it would have been a 4.5. The only reason I'm not giving it 5 was just because I wanted more, especially based on the time where this book ends. I know that there were some very interesting events that were happening not too long after the book ended, so I knew it was all about Risio, but I wanted to carry on and read more about the rest of the characters. This book was full of moments that just tugged on my heartstrings, and moments that made me laugh, and moments that just made me really sad because of the betrayal that was going on. This book was great. I highly recommend. Next up was The Young Team by Graeme Armstrong, which is a book that people have been telling me for ages that I need to read because I will love it. And once again, the people who recommended books to me were right because I love this book. This book was all about Azzy, who was part of a gang in Lanarkshire in the west coast of Scotland, and it goes through 3 main periods of his life. So it starts off with him just being a wee kid of like 13, 14, joining the gang. He's so excited because his friends have joined as well, and that's just what kids where he was did. They joined one of the gangs, and then it goes to him leaving Lanarkshire and then coming back. This book is all written in the vernacular. I don't think you need to be Scottish to be able to read and enjoy this. There was a lot of violence in this book, as it covers a time when Scotland was the murder capital. So there were parts that were kind of quite hard to read because it was quite gritty, and I'm not really good, I'm very squeamish, but I did enjoy it and I loved the characters. The friendships in this book were just so strong, and there was such a theme of loyalty, and that your family wasn't just your blood, it was your gang was your family, and they all protected each other. And I thought that in spite of all of the violence going on, was really beautiful. I find myself growing so attached to the characters in this book, and when violent things happened, I really felt for them. I'd grown so attached to them, and I do think that this book was hopeful, which sounds a bit strange, but it was all about sort of Azzy trying to find out what he wanted from life, and did he want to be in a gang for the rest of his life when he felt so much older than the rest of the gang members, when he was, I think, 21 when the book ended. And at that point a lot of his friends had moved on to either a different way of life, some legal, some not, and I just really enjoyed reading about somebody struggling to sort of find out what happens when you're at that age where you've become an adult and you kind of have to leave your childhood behind you. This was filled with lots of references to rave culture, which I don't think anyone will be surprised to know that I know nothing about. But I thought that was really interesting too. There were lots of references to drugs, both using and selling, so that's maybe something to be aware of if you don't want to read a book that includes lots of drug references. I thought this book was just gritty, it was dark, it was really funny in parts, and ultimately it was heartwarming in parts, which I didn't expect from this book, and I just really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and I really need to start listening to recommendations that I get, and I need to read the book at the time, because each time I get a recommendation I wait ages. Turns out I love the book, and I could have loved the book earlier, so lesson learned, but I probably won't change because that's just who I am. Next up, I had an author I've already read and enjoyed before. I read Vicky, Romeo plus Joolz by Eli Percy, and this book was a romance set in 2001 in Glasgow between Vicky and Joolz. I really enjoyed this book, and I think I enjoyed it more because of the sort of author's introduction at the beginning of the book, where the author did explain that the book was written in 2001, and had the book been written at the time, it would have been a completely different book. There were some attitudes that were definitely not okay, and that's acknowledged by the author. I think that had I not had that introductory note at the beginning of the book, I would have read this and just been like, oh no, too much. But because of knowing that it was set then and it was written then, it sort of felt in keeping with the time, if that makes sense. I loved the group, the friendships that were in this book, and everybody was sort of intertwined, and that kind of felt really realistic for the scene that they were in, and I really liked some of the characters. First, I wasn't too sure about Vicky Romeo. She kind of felt a bit like, well, we've all met a Vicky Romeo, someone who calls themselves a Romeo, who's so cavalier and confident and is like, oh, nobody ever turns me down. But behind that veneer, she was soft and just wanted to be loved, and she lacked confidence and sort of made up for it with bravado. I didn't like Joolz at first. I thought she was a bit of a tool, and I didn't like the way that she treated Vicky, but to be fair, Vicky was really coming on strong. I mean, take a hint. but eventually you sort of got to get to know the characters and realise that that was covering up for real feelings. I really liked Kat in this book too. She seemed like the sort of friend that you would want to kind of help fix things. I did not see the twist coming, and when it did, I audibly gasped because it was such a good twist. And the fallout was just so sad. My heart just broke. But then, you know, everything didn't, you know, magically fix itself back together, but ultimately I got a happy ending, and that's what I wanted from this book. And I thought the writing in this book was just really nice. The language in this book was really, really enjoyable. It was like conversations with your friends in literature. So it was very conversational, and I liked that. I also enjoy books that reference places I have been to. So there were some clubs in this book that I have been to, and I liked that. And this, even though this book was set in 2001, it was really set in 2001. Like, there were internet cafes, people had Nokias. It was so enjoyable, a nice little trip down memory lane. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm so happy that I read it. I only picked it up at the start of this month, so I am ridiculously proud of myself for reading a book in the same month that I bought it. It's pretty unusual for me to do that, so I'm not expecting that to happen again. I gave this book 4 stars. Still love Eli Percy. They've not let me down. And my last Scottish read of March was Miss Blaine's Prefect and the Weird Sisters by Olga Wojtas. I got this as an ARC. I was ridiculously excited to receive this as an advanced reader's copy because I have read the previous 2 books in this series. And I say series, it's not so much a series in that you have to have read every book for it to make sense. It's more in a series in the kind of way that Poirot is a series, where you can just dip in and read one, and it's fine if you've not read previous ones because it will all make sense to you. This is about Shona McMonagall, who went to Marsha Blaine's School for Girls, which in this universe was the school that was the inspiration for the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. And they do not enjoy the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. It's just the underlying theme. They are not approving of the way that the school was portrayed, so keep that in mind. And the head teacher of the School for Girls sends Shona back in time to fix things, and in this book it's mentioned that she goes back to fix things that negatively impact the way that people think about Scotland. This book is set around the event of Macbeth, and it involves obviously Macbeth, there's a black cat, there's the Weird Sisters. It was very, very enjoyable, and this book was just so funny. The thing with this series is that Shona has got the best education that one could get. She is so book smart, she's so learned, but her common sense is negligible. She has no common sense at all, no gumption, and that is the running theme, and that's what makes this book so funny. Also, Shona doesn't know what her mission is. She's an annoyed head teacher, so she's not been given any clues because she may have caused a ruckus in the last book. So Marsha Blaine is a little bit irked. So she's literally just sent back and has no clue about what she has to do, and she has to try to work out what her mission is and then do the mission. So it was really enjoyable having all of the characters that are familiar from Shakespeare, but having them come to life in this book and having a sort of alternate reality, which is something that I really enjoy reading about. And this book had a cat who spoke, and I was a huge fan of that, really enjoyed it, but I also really enjoyed the relationships between all of the characters. I liked the witches in Macbeth, I liked Duncan and everybody, I liked Hecate, It was so good, and I am just so happy that I got to read this before it came out, and just after finishing the last book. I'm kind of sad that I now have to wait. Well, I don't know if there's another book. I hope there is, because this is a series that I feel like it could just go on, and I'm happy to keep reading it as long as it keeps getting published. So here's hoping there's more. This was such a quick and easy read. I read this in a day. I could not put it down. I didn't want to put it down. So I finished it because I wanted to. And it was so funny, and it was just so, it was exactly what I wanted. I wanted to read something that was comedic and sort of made me belly laugh and was ridiculous in parts. This was utterly ridiculous in parts, and I was so there for it. Jonah was mistaken for being a fool and played that role perfectly. It was so funny, and the book was filled, and I mean filled, with really bad jokes, like knock jokes, terrible jokes that were probably too bad to even be in crackers at Christmas time. But in the context of this, because people of this time had never heard of any of these jokes, they found them hilarious, which then meant I found them hilarious. And then I realised I was laughing at the joke about elephants in custard and thought, oh, well, here we are. I'm laughing at a really bad joke. And I kept laughing at the really bad jokes because it just, oh, it was so enjoyable from start to finish, really. I gave this book 4 stars, like a high 4.5, but I really enjoyed this and I highly recommend the series. So those are my Scottish reads for March. Again, I have no clue what I'm going to read next month, so it's going to just be a nice surprise, but let's aim for 4 books again because I quite like having 4. If you've read any of these books, then please let me know in the comments. Let me know how you got on with them. I really enjoyed them all, so I kind of would gladly talk about them. If you like this video, feel free to like. I post videos every Sunday, so if you want to watch those, and yeah, feel free to subscribe. I mainly post them for myself, but if people want to watch, then you're more than welcome to. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your week. Bye.